Welcome, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us for our review of the 30% design of the Dormont Junction station this evening. I wish we could be doing this in person, but I hope that this format will work. And actually, we've got a nice presentation for you, so I look forward to the discussion. This project is part of our station improvement program, which is a program aimed at investing the capital resources into some of our existing stations along the fixed route guideways to increase ridership and encourage more equitable transit-oriented development. The stations were prioritized based on a detailed evaluation of factors contributing to transit-oriented development, and Dormont Junction rated as one of the high priority locations. Dormont is our third station area plan going through this design process. The first one was Negley Station along the East Busway, where construction is expected to begin this summer. And last Monday, we met with the public to review Station Square Station, which is also at the 30% design phase. So Station Square and Dormont are very similar in the status. We really encourage you to participate in tonight's discussion so that we can ensure the station meets the design needs for all riders and neighbors. We really welcome your input, and this is your station, so please let us know what you'd like to see here. Before we begin, though, I do want to acknowledge the noise issue around the Mount Lebanon Tunnel and the noise that are coming from the ventilation fans there. And I wanted to give you a little bit of background, and I acknowledge the pain and intrusion that noise has caused to residents both in Dormont and Mount Lebanon. For background, in late November, a team of inspectors from PennDOT had been doing a track inspection, and they discovered some corrosion on some of the metal objects inside the tunnel, which included some scaling on some of the track that was caused by moisture and condensation. So when we were alerted to the issue, we started operating the existing tunnel fans there, and it was actually over 12 hours a day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We did reduce the operation of the fans in January and then further reduced them in March to where they are today, which is operating from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we are working diligently to seek solutions to reduce the noise impacts while keeping the tunnel dry in the short term. And ultimately, we had already planned to do a project to replace those tunnel fans with some newer fans that will be quieter. That's part of a separate project that is not something that we'll be discussing this evening. However, there is information that I'll share with you about that project. The timeline for those long-term improvements is subject to change due to a number of factors, but at this point, we're hoping that the new fans will be operational by at least early fall of 2022. While tonight's meeting is dedicated to studying the Dormont Junction station design, we do encourage anyone who has comments or questions about the tunnel fans to either call 412-566-5544. We'll put that number in the chat as well. That's a phone line dedicated to the Mount Lebanon Tunnel Transit Tunnel Ventilation Fan Project. We'll also talk about some of the other materials that are available as well. And I saw Ben Estelle on the list of participants earlier. Know that we have met with Mr. Estelle several times, and we'll continue to meet with him to provide updates on the project, and hopefully we will get resolution as quickly as possible. But now getting back to the designs for the future Dormont Junction station, I want to turn it over to Breen Masiotra, who is our section manager of planning. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Breen Masiotra, the section manager of planning for Port Authority. And I'm just going to kick off the presentation here tonight with some background information on sort of why we did this project to begin with. So Port Authority a few years ago began a transit-oriented development program to create TOD near and in our system, and the project we're here to talk about tonight is a result of those efforts. So to start off, I want to make sure we all know what TOD is. It is dense, mixed-use, walkable development close to high-quality transit. So pretty much all of Dormont is TOD if you think about it, but in particular, we're talking about creating new TOD. Next slide, please. So when Port Authority works on transit-oriented development, we do it in a couple of different ways. We sometimes act as a sponsor for joint development. What that means is that we sometimes build transit-oriented development on our own property, and Dormont is such an example. Sometimes we also act as a stakeholder for transit-oriented development that occurs near our stations, but not on our property, meaning that we are involved with the project, we're interested in the outcomes, we want to see a good project happen, but we don't have a direct stake. And then the third is as an advocate for sustainable land use decisions along our transit corridors, and that includes things like being involved in Dormont's zoning efforts and encouraging zoning that will support transit-oriented development. Next slide. So in order to see transit-oriented development happen in our system, we created a transit-oriented communities program that includes a number of elements. All of this is available on our website with more information. We have a set of guidelines that outline best practices for TOD. We have done some work with a number of communities in Allegheny County around TOD zoning, and there's a report and more information about that on our website. We have a first and last mile program plan, which looks at how people get to transit and how they get from transit to their destination. And we're looking at ways that we might be able to partner with municipalities to make improvements to those trips to help people get to transit more easily and safely. We have the Station Improvement Program, which is the program that led to the project we're talking about tonight. And then we have joint development again, which is transit-oriented development on our property. Next slide, please. So the Station Improvement Program, as David mentioned, is the program by which we invest in our existing station facilities to help catalyze transit-oriented development. This program has a couple of different steps to it. We started a few years ago with looking at all of our stations and identifying the places where there was the greatest opportunity for TOD. And Dormont was among the top stations, so it was among the first places that we did station area planning. So after the evaluation comes planning. You can see the completed plan shown on this slide. It's also available on our website. You'll see some images from it shortly. And then when the plan was complete, we went and took what we learned from the plan into the design process, which is what we're here to talk about tonight. So we took a concept and we turned it into a design that can eventually be built. Next slide, please. So when we undertook station area planning in Dormont in 2018, we looked at the station area and we thought about, you can see on the right-hand side, the aerial view. I'm sure you're all familiar with the area, but this is a unique perspective. You know, those three parking lots are the site on which we'd like to consider future development. Then, of course, the station is at the bottom. The station has really excellent service, trains every 12 minutes, and that's at the bottom. The road at the top, West Liberty, has a bus every 20 minutes. So this is a very well connected site close to downtown with lots of transit connection. Next slide, please. And when we pursued this process, we collected a lot of input. We talked to riders, we surveyed people at the station, and we asked them about what barriers or obstacles they might encounter getting to transit, where they're coming from, where they're going, what would make the station better. We also talked to Port Authority staff and said, you work here all the time. What are the challenges that you see? How could we make this an easier station to maintain or operate? And then we had public meetings, and you can see the photos on the right-hand side here where we met upstairs at the library, and folks came out and told us what they thought about the ideas that we had come up with, and then with their support, put those ideas in the final plan. So with that, that's my sort of segue into the plan itself. And I'm going to turn the floor over to my colleague, Maura Egler, to talk about the concepts in the plan in more detail.
Thanks, Breen. Hello, everybody. I'm Maura Egler. I am the Transit-Oriented Communities Project Manager at the Port Authority, and I will be walking us through the design slides this evening. So these first couple of slides are images from the 2018 Dormont Junction Station Area Plan that Breen was just describing, was created with community input. So this is just to provide a reminder of kind of the ideas and designs that were put forward in this plan. So first, one of the main goals of the Station Improvement Program is to improve station access. And so this design proposes to do that in a couple of different ways. First, this shows station access from Biltmore Avenue. This proposes a number of different ideas. One is kind of this vehicle turnaround that would be in front of the station here on the inbound side. This would provide an area for people to be dropped off at the station and a convenient turnaround to lead back up to West Liberty Avenue. This also shows a bus-only connector route that would connect Raleigh Avenue with Biltmore kind of through the site. This would be for bus shuttles that replace T service when the trains are not running. So this would just be for those shuttles. There's also a number of enhancements like wider sidewalks that would kind of increase the pedestrian experience and safety. Also increased plantings, as well as opportunities for green stormwater infrastructure to manage stormwater on site. And then also proposed are some intersection improvements at West Liberty that would also provide safer pedestrian access. Next, we're going to look at station access via Raleigh Avenue and Park Boulevard. So first, looking on the upper right-hand side and the right-hand side is the Park Boulevard proposal. So there's currently a contraflow bus lane from Raleigh to Park that allows buses to exit onto West Liberty from Park Boulevard when the light rail is not in operation. This is not really used very much, so if we were to remove this contraflow lane, it would free up a lot of space on Park Boulevard for more on-street parking, as well as wider sidewalks and more plantings. And kind of that bottom right-hand image is a little rendering of what that might look like. And then looking to our left, we see Raleigh Avenue. So along Raleigh, there's kind of that existing jagged sawtooth sidewalk, which is really not the most efficient use of space there. So if we were to reconfigure that sidewalk, we would allow for more space for pedestrians, more space for street trees and other plantings, as well as room for a bus layover station for those shuttles I was talking about. And then finally, also at Raleigh, are some improvements to pedestrian connections here. So if you, this crosswalk here would actually experience a bump out, which would shorten the crossing time and distance for pedestrians, making it easier. It would also open up that space for more public space, kind of a public entry plaza, which we'll see some more drawings of in a minute. So this is the kind of station conceptual design of the station itself. The existing station does present a number of challenges that this conceptual design is proposing to address. So currently, pedestrian areas and entrances are pretty confusing and ambiguous. It's sort of hard to tell where you're going, where you're supposed to be. Additionally, there are heavy concrete blocks that block visibility, as well as the existing canopy that's pretty dark and kind of doesn't make the station feel very welcome. And it also doesn't cover the entire platform. So this station conceptual design does propose to address 4 major kind of topics or areas for improvement. The first is pedestrian circulation and entry, so how people move throughout the site. The outbound platform and length platform length and location, which we're proposing to alter, the conditions of the platforms themselves, and also station visibility. Pedestrians have to enter currently the station at kind of a difficult location. And so this conceptual design proposes to relocate the outbound platform entrance ramp from the end of the platform to a location mid-platform. It's also proposing to shift the north end edge of the outbound platform away from the Raleigh Avenue bend by about 10 to 15 feet, which would further widen the pedestrian area. And we'll see some more detailed drawings of that in a minute. So this is some more detail on the conceptual design. It's a lot of detail here. I realize it's probably pretty hard to read, but you can find all of these documents on our website. But just a few highlights from this image. So we're seeing the extension of the outbound platform to provide for more space, as well as the outbound platform canopy. This, again, is being shifted over 10 to 15 feet from the Raleigh Avenue, and then on the other side being actually extended to provide some more space. Also proposing some wind screens, which are these blue panels that protect from wind but would let light in and provide an opportunity for some station identity signage as well. It would be a new canopy structure that provides shelter for the entire platform on both sides, as well as all the pedestrian areas. So that's full canopy coverage for the whole station. That would also be made of a new kind of translucent material to allow more light into the platforms. And then also we're proposing some covered bike parking on both the inbound and outbound side, as well as new passenger seating on both platforms. And finally, so as Breen mentioned, the plan looked at some possible transit-oriented development scenarios for this site. So this is kind of the concept for what could take place here. As we mentioned, this lot is currently owned, half of it by us, the Port Authority, and the other half by the Borough of Dormont. So it's a large site that allows for potential for a sizable mixed-use development. This design contemplates 4 distinct buildings, which would include a mix of housing, first floor retail, and office space. This proposal shows the 2 buildings kind of fronting West Liberty Avenue might have first floor commercial space, while the buildings in the back of the site, which would face, one would face Park, the other would face Biltmore, those might be residential and could be about between 4 and 5 stories tall to kind of blend in with the surrounding buildings. And also, finally, parking platform is proposed to be tucked underneath the buildings to provide parking for the proposed development and possibly other nearby uses. This is also in addition to the new on-street parking that could be created along Raleigh Avenue and Park, as I mentioned earlier. So now we're going to move into the new drawings. So what we're showing are new drawings at the 30% design phase. This is the first round of drawings that will go on to become construction documents for the new station. So we'll have an opportunity to review these tonight at the 30% phase, again at the 60% phase, and then finally at the 90% phase. So this is the first step in the design process tonight. So this is the landscape concept. This just shows kind of the additional plantings that we're hoping to take place on site here. A lot of additional trees happening on Raleigh adjacent to the station, some opportunities for plantings on the other side adjacent to the inbound station. I should point out that the lighter green trees kind of shown across the street from the station, that's not Port Authority owned property, but this just shows, you know, what might be possible there were Raleigh Avenue to be reconfigured. So this is the proposed overall station, kind of a before the existing design that's on the left, and then the proposed overall station that's on the right. We'll kind of zoom in to that proposed station. So here we can see the, we're looking at the station from the Raleigh Avenue kind of corner, that bend. You can see that the platform has been shifted, as I mentioned, away from the street, and you can see some open space here with some seating walls along the side here with increased plantings. We can see this bump out at the intersection and the crosswalk here that provides Again, both more space for the public at the entrance and also just shorter crossing distance for pedestrians. You can also here see the blue paneling. These would be the windscreens that I mentioned. There would probably be a glass material that would be provide screening from wind, but also some shade while letting in some natural light just to make the platform feel more welcoming. And also to provide some opportunity for station signage. So here's another view of the overall station. Again, existing conditions on the left with the proposed conditions on the right. And zooming in here, we see this is kind of an aerial view of the station looking with the outbound platform and the Raleigh Avenue in the foreground. So here we can see the reconfigured sidewalk along Raleigh Avenue. We've gotten rid of that jagged sawtooth sidewalk, kind of straightened it out, increased the width of the sidewalk there and showing some street trees. It's another view of the blue paneling. And then also the extended canopy and extended outbound platform. This is just giving that platform more space. And this canopy, again, would be made from sort of a translucent material that would feel much lighter and allow more natural light into the platform. And again, it would also be, not only would it cover the entirety of the platforms, but it would also cover the pedestrian areas. So providing some nice cover from rain and other elements. Here's another view. This is the kind of outbound platform. On the left, you can see what is existing there. So that's the existing entrance, existing ramp entrance that's now at the end of the platform. And then you see the existing canopy material. And on the right is what's proposed. And so what we're proposing to do is relocate that ramp entrance from the end of the platform, and it would be moved to the middle of the platform. So you can kind of see that off to the right-hand side a little bit. We're relocating the ramp there, and it would actually put you right into the middle of that outbound platform. Here again, we can see the pedestrian passenger plaza here, that increased space for pedestrians that was created by shifting the platform over by 10 or 15 feet. And then we also see kind of another view of these canopies and what they might look like. We also see some detail on the other side of the inbound platform, some, again, identity signage in the form of screens, as well as in front of those would be new passenger seating in the form of concrete or composite new benches. And then finally, this is another detailed look at the outbound platform. So this is the other end of the platform from where we were just looking. So this is that extension of the canopy and extension of the platform itself. Some more opportunity for signage with screening, as well as we see the covered bike parking here, which is also nice to keep your bikes kind of out of the elements. And again, just another view of kind of the other side of the platform that will be expanded to allow more space. So those are the 30% designs that we have to show you this evening. We encourage you to look at our project website. It's portauthority.org/Dormont Junction. This is where you'll find all of the up-to-date drawings. We're going to upload this presentation. We'll also upload the recording of this meeting to this website so that you can revisit it or share with people who weren't able to attend tonight. There's also opportunity to provide feedback through this website. So if you forgot to mention something tonight or want to share with friends and neighbors to provide feedback, you can do so on this website. And with that, I think we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Maura. All right, so we're going to now begin the Q&A session, and we're going to start with a comment in the chat bar. And in addition to the chat bar, if you have a question, you can use the raise your hand feature, and we will be sure to call your name, and then we'll also be sure to get to those who called in on the phone as well. So first we have Connor Tompkins. And Connor says, one issue I noticed is that the inbound payment machine is facing West Liberty. This means that for most of the day, it is in direct sunlight. The screen on the machine is dim, so it is barely readable.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I believe we didn't show it, but there, I believe we will be relocating those ticket machines so that they don't face that direction. But Breen can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I will say that one of the benefits of this canopy that's going to be increased will kind of provide some of that shade and hopefully maybe alleviate some of those issues. But I do believe we're maybe relocating those ticket machines so that they might not be facing that way. Am I right about that, Breen?
I don't think so. I think that they will be in roughly the same location, but they will be under a canopy that is more significant than what's there now.
Yeah. Thank you for that comment.
Okay, so now we're going to move to some of the folks who have their hand raised. We've got Samuel Hurst. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes, good evening. This is Samuel Hurst. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Phenomenal. No, this looks like a really great idea. It's always exciting to see transit improvements for the residents of Allegheny County. You had mentioned that there was a bus route that operates every 20 minutes. I believe that's the 41 Bower Hill. Just kind of adding on top of that, we have a route called the 39 Brookline. Years ago, it used to have evening and Sunday service going to Dormont. Maybe potentially we could look at keeping the 39 goes between Penn Park and Brookline. Maybe we can extend it from Penn Park to Brookline to go out to Dormont. There's a lot of commerce between Brookline residents, Dormont residents, Brookline businesses, and Dormont businesses. So maybe somehow we could tie in an extension of the 39 up through here, maybe even all the way into Mount Lebanon. That could bring even more people to this.
Yes, thank you for that. That's definitely a suggestion that we can take a look at, as we do with all kind of service requests, and see if it kind of makes sense to pursue something like that.
Thank you.
Okay, Christian P., would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So I just want, you guys kind of talked over this a little bit, but the parking that is currently there for the Dormont T station, am I understanding that a majority of that, which is already free and available to Dormont residents, is going to be removed, and they're going to be building on top of it? And there's going to be, is it going to be the same amount of parking? Is there going to be less parking? Is it going to be available to people who are riding the T? I just wasn't very clear on that when I was listening.
Yeah, so we do propose building building on top of that site that currently is the park and ride. The new, again, this is just a proposal for the TOD. None of this has been kind of designed past a 10% conceptual design. These are just proposals for what might work on site. But this particular proposal does call for parking to be kind of located under the new buildings. And it doesn't really talk about amounts of parking, in terms of what would be allocated, to a park and ride, or what would be allocated to maybe parking for the residential units and so on. But those exact numbers weren't addressed in the plan, but that, there would still be parking on site, but it would be kind of for a mix of uses now. It wouldn't just be a park and ride.
Okay, so right now it's too preliminary to know exactly what's going to be done with it, is what it sounds like. Is there going to be talks in the future, or the near future, about what the plans are for that?
Eventually, yes. I mean, we would have to go through kind of a solicitation process for developers, and an RFP process, and that's kind of a separate process from the design of the station. So we, in order to kind of solicit ideas for or proposals for development for this site, that would be its own process that would have where all those details would be worked out in terms of, building design, parking, usage, all of that stuff.
Okay, no, thank you. I just wanted to get more clear. The other thing I was going to ask, just green infrastructure. I see you added the additional bike parking that's covered. Are there any other green infrastructure plans for this T-stop?
So some of what's proposed in the street tree plantings and the additional kind of plantings along the station are green stormwater infrastructure. So tree beds that can actually collect and manage stormwater on site to help kind of with flooding issues. That's something that's also proposed in the plan.
Any plans for any solar or EV charging stations at all, or has that not been discussed?
Not specifically. I believe actually though that if I remember correctly, an area where near the covered bike parking is certainly going to be adapted so that potentially, well, maybe I'm thinking of a different project now, but now that I think about it, but I believe there will be capabilities like built in for potential in the future charging stations or like e-bike charging stations. I think we're looking at how to build those into like the utility plans, I believe.
Okay. So it's vaguely in the plans potentially. That's what it sounds like.
It's being explored.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have three comments in the chat, but two are related, so we can start with those. Dave says, one big idea from the previous study was trying to find a way to help pedestrians get across West Liberty. Can that idea be carried forward? And Connor says, crossing West Liberty is a major issue for me. I've seen cars coming from McFarland not yield to pedestrians many times. A bus shelter at the West Liberty 41 stop and significant traffic calming at McFarland West Liberty would go a long way.
So one of the things called for in the plan, it does highlight kind of the dangerous pedestrian conditions on West Liberty. And it does call for, the replacement of signals at that intersection, increased protections for pedestrians, proposed for that intersection. That, of course, would be sort of outside of the scope of what Port Authority would construct potentially, but it's definitely called for in the plan, and would have to be part of any kind of proposal for any, TOD that might take place here. Would definitely have to look at that intersection and make some improvements for pedestrians.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that quickly. We recognize the need now, and I think if it were up to Port Authority and the borough, we would seek to install something there in the short term. What we found in our study was that the way that things operate today, there aren't quite enough cars using Biltmore to justify the signal in PennDOT's terms. So what we know is that the development that's proposed would actually help us to better justify to PennDOT installing a signal there so that we could have crosswalks and not force people to walk all the way to McFarland or to run across West Liberty in a dangerous way. So it's definitely a goal of both Port Authority, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, Ben, when I say the borough, that we make that crossing safe. We just have to, unfortunately, follow some guidelines from PennDOT, and it looks like, based on the work we've done so far, that the development will be the opportunity we need to see that piece of this through. And I just want to take this opportunity we're happy to answer questions about the plan as a whole, but our real focus tonight is the station facility. That's the plan that we did in 2018 is a big plan. It has a lot of parts, and the part that we're carrying forward right now and that we're focused on tonight is the station itself, the platforms, and the shelter structures and the public space. So again, if you have other questions, we're happy to answer them, but just want to make sure that everyone knows that if you have comments on the station, that's the heart of what we hope to get out of tonight's discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Breen. We have another question in the chat, and I think this is sort of related to what you were saying. This is more about the larger plan, but how many residential units are proposed in total for the entire project? Has the parking impact study been done for the area? And will Port Authority Police or Dormont Police be responsible for public safety operations in the project area once residential units are occupied?
Well, so I don't think we don't know how many units. That wasn't really explored. You know, that level of detail wasn't explored in the plan. Just the general use of the buildings was proposed in the plan, and we didn't, you know, get into the detail on the number of units, number of parking spaces. And so I don't. Breen can answer the question about the parking impact study. I'm not 100% sure about that. And the last question was, Port Authority Police or Dormont Police be responsible for public safety operations in the project area? That's another good question that I don't know the answer to. I would imagine that it would probably be the local police would be responsible for that, but
yeah, I can help out here. So in terms of it's not a parking impact study, it's a transportation impact study, and those are conducted by developers as part of the approval process that municipalities require. So that will not be done until a developer has been selected and has made it through the sort of initial study phase and is moving ahead with applications to construct something on the site. And then it will be, the borough's responsibility to review any required studies, and it's, dependent on their regulations. So perhaps Ben would want to jump in if we want to get more detail on that as to what's required and whether or not the project is meeting those requirements. In terms of police, Port Authority Police have the authority to enforce anywhere in the county, and they support local police as necessary. So the project area would be like any other residential area where the local police would be the primary, and Port Authority Police would support them if and when necessary.
Thank you, Breen. And I would just like to read a comment. Ben Estelle had weighed in on the previous conversation about West Liberty and traffic. He had said, that is correct. Unfortunately, West Liberty traffic forces vehicles leaving the site to exit onto Park, which prevents us from meeting PennDOT's evening numbers. So I just wanted to make sure to read that out. I'll go to some people on the phone. So let's see who've had their hand raised. It looks like Mark Ford, you have your hand raised.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. I just wanted to say that this looks as a fairly frequent user of this station, not as much as Potomac, but this looks like it addresses many of the shortcomings that are at this station. It looks like it'll better accommodate riders. Things look like they'll flow better when a train full of people pulls up. It looks more pleasant, and it just looks safer. It's always a little dodgy right where Raleigh turns around the trains that are going inbound. I have something very prosaic, which is just that I don't see the pylon signs with the schedules and the maps. Sometimes those are installed perpendicular, so the booth attendant can't see all the way up and down the platform. And there's some antisocial behavior that happens behind those signs. So if you can put them so that that is minimized, that'd be great. And I really appreciate the bike parking on both sides. I appreciate that it's covered, and appreciate that that you've retained the secondary or future access in case, fare collection or whatever changes down the road. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we also have Andrew on the phone.
Yes, I kind of wanted to echo a little bit of what Samuel Hurst was saying earlier about the service, but as nice as it would be to extend service on, say, the 39 or whatever, I still strongly, as I've been saying from the beginning, think that the two biggest things that should happen with Dormont Junction is mixed-use development, including low-income residency, and also loop some buses into the darn station. People have been begging for it for a while.
Thank you for that. Yeah, those are helpful comments. And I mean, to the affordability, comment, we do have TOD guidelines that Breen kind of briefly mentioned, and one of our kind of overarching principles of our program is, a desire for housing that would be, part of any TOD on our property, that it would have some affordability components. So I definitely appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Seth Davis on the phone.
Hi, this is Seth. It's been great to be a part of this process from the beginning, and I just want to give kudos to the team, Breen, your team from Port Authority, and I know that several consultants brought on that were really good as part of the process. So it seems like most of that the conceptual design has been maintained. I just had a couple questions on some of the bike parking. Is there any consideration? I know you've done this sort of in East Liberty, but for secure bike parking or something like a Unipod situation out of New York City, to have that parking be secure. It's great that it's covered, but I don't know if I would feel comfortable leaving my bike all day, depending on what it looks like. And then also kind of the lighting situation on the station. Is it integral to the station platform, or the covering of the station lighting around the bike parking area and the station itself?
Those are all really good questions. I can say to the bike kind of locker question, we don't have, right now it's not proposed to be bike lockers here at this location, but we actually are getting ready to pilot some bike lockers and some other locations throughout our system. And so this will be something that our colleague Sarah has been working on, that will kind of be a first for Port Authority in terms of managing bike lockers. So the details of that are still being worked out, but I can say that we are in the process of creating a pilot project for lockers. So basically stay tuned for that, I would say. And then the question about lighting was, sorry, could you remind me, you were asking if the bike parking itself would be lighted?
I just couldn't tell. I know it's 30%, so I couldn't tell what the lighting would be like. My greater concern is kind of the bike parking on Raleigh is in a, less eyes on the street kind of situation, where you would park there. So I didn't know what the lighting would be like, since we live in Pittsburgh and it does get dark early in the later times of the year. So I'm just curious what the strategy, I guess, would be. Obviously you would include it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't believe we're showing much lighting right now in this plan, but Breen, can you address any questions about lighting?
I can't address them specifically. What I can say is that we have been using, in addition to the conceptual plan developed for Dormont Junction specifically, we've been using our light rail design guidelines to guide this work, and that gets into considerable detail about lighting fixtures and lighting levels. So we'll be following those guidelines in this case as well. Those guidelines are, if Seth, I know you're in the field. So if you want to get into the weeds about it, you can find those guidelines on our website too. But those lighting levels and lighting fixtures will have been, determined by internal and consultant architects to, meet broad standards for public facilities like this.
Awesome, that's great. I'm really excited for it. I know a lot of people that use that station are very excited. So kudos to everyone involved.
Thanks.
Thank you, Seth. All right, we had a couple of comments in the chat. Brent Wasco asked, was non-concrete seating considered? And was installation of heating lamps considered? The current seating gets very cold during the winter. I believe Breen responded that the seating is not 100% concrete. It has wood slats to sit on and to see East Liberty Station, for example. Is there anything else you'd like to add about that, Breen or Maura?
To the heating question, that isn't planned for this site, but I can say that what will happen, hopefully, is that the canopy covering will not only kind of protect the seating from like snow and rain and ice and all of that, but might also allow for some natural light to, make a little bit of a difference and for it not to be so dark and, cold under there. So that's one added benefit potentially of that new canopy material.
Okay, so we had another comment. Would the windscreens limit visibility? I believe that is visibility from Raleigh for the Dormont police or people on the platform.
No, because they would be translucent. So they are glass. They're proposed to be glass. So while they're not, completely clear, see-through like, window, they are a blue kind of translucent material. So you would still be able to see through them and see people on the other side.
Okay, and that comment was from Jeff Fabus. I did not read that out loud. Then we have a comment from Connor Tompkins. So much of our public space in Dormont is already reserved for single passenger vehicles, parking on both sides of streets, lack of pedestrian signaling, etc. I hope Port Authority doesn't spend too much limited space on parking for single passenger vehicles, prioritize transit and pedestrians. I think we have another hand up. Christian P, did you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
I already spoke, so I don't know if it's an accident, but sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you. Is there anybody who has called in on the phone who would like to go ahead and unmute? It would be *6. Okay, it looks like we have another comment that popped up in the chat from Mark Ford. It says, following the comment about buses serving the station, are there a significant number of transferring passengers from bus to rail here? The bus stops nearby are not pleasant places to wait given narrow sidewalks, busy traffic, drivers turning on to park at fairly high speed. Longer term, could you consider more pleasant sites at Biltmore when the crossing is established? They would be better sited to connect to this station.
So
You want me to? I can jump in on this one.
Yeah.
One sort of fact of life is that the data we collect about people making transit trips doesn't tell us exactly what they're doing. So we can't know for sure if folks are getting off of a bus and onto a rail or off a rail onto a bus here. But it does seem unlikely because from this location, the trip into town is virtually identical. It's possible someone wants to go somewhere out on the 41, but the light rail and it seems unlikely. Totally possible, but not hugely likely. The bus stops in and of themselves, we can definitely think about how to make those a better place to wait for transit. We have fairly recently published bus stop and street design guidelines. Those are also available on our website. And we are, as an agency, trying to, be more proactive about working with property owners and municipalities to ensure that bus stops are first and foremost safe and accessible, and then definitely also comfortable. We want it to be a nice place to wait for the bus to come. So those guidelines are available to you as a tool if you want to understand what it takes to make a bus stop safe and accessible. If you want to go out and talk to a property owner about making an improvement of some kind, just sort of for the record, for everyone's knowledge, at a bus stop on the street, the only thing that Port Authority owns is the sign. So we have to work with partners to make those bus stops better places for all of you to use. And so, we welcome, your support in doing that.
Thank you, Breen. All right, it looks like we have Ben Estelle. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Thank you. First, I just wanted to thank Breen and her team for working so well with Dormont's residents, as well as the local government. Partnered on this for a while now, and I think we're finally seeing a lot of action on a number of fronts for this. And for those who did not attend any of the sessions on the planning process to get to this, the team has really stuck with what they heard from the community in those meetings and is developing exactly what they were asked to develop for the station. I was trying to keep the focus as much on the station as possible, but the kind of development portion is natural to come up. So I wanted to get through as many of the questions as possible before jumping in on any of that. A lot of the kind of questions and hopefully answers on that will be, dependent on the future. For those who are very much interested in what that future could be, our next public hearing on Dormont's zoning code is next Monday at 7 o'clock on Zoom. And that zoning code will very much determine what the shape of any possible development at this site would be. And certainly a number of the comments that we've heard here tonight will be, will likely be included in that. I can't guarantee anything until council officially votes on it. But one of the things that will be looked at and was put into the station area plan in their report is inclusionary zoning, which would address some affordable housing on that site. I know that was one of the comments by one of the guests tonight. Parking, bike parking, all of those types of things are addressed in some ways through our zoning code, as well as lighting for the area. So that document will help guide any potential development on the site. And as I mentioned earlier, when it came to the Biltmore exit, it really is an issue. I've spoken with PennDOT about this, as I know Breen has as well. They depend on a number of vehicles using the turn at that intersection, both in the morning and in the evening. We can reach the morning number, but we cannot reach the evening number because traffic on West Liberty prevents anyone from turning when they try to leave. So everyone takes the little alley over to Park and down to Dell, which takes us away from those numbers. So we're hoping that PennDOT will work with us once we get close to any development on the site to review those plans to show that it is necessary both for vehicles, which seems to be one of their primary concerns, and pedestrians, which is our bigger concern for that intersection. And I'm here to help answer anything else, but I really wanted this to be about Breen's team and the work that they've done. So again, thank you all for what you've done.
Thank you, Ben. All right, so we have another question that popped up in the chat from Jeff Fabus. Are there next steps, build time? Will any of the streets around the station be closed during construction?
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself. Yeah, so basically the next step here is to proceed to the next phase of design. So that would be the 60% designs, where there will be another opportunity to review the plans and comment. As far as kind of so the next step really is to get to that phase, and then beyond that, get to 90% and finish these design drawings. We don't, I don't believe we have really a timeline for construction. It's kind of too early to know, when we would even have funding for construction, let alone when the 90% design will be completed. But and part of that kind of latter, the 90% design will include things like phasing, construction phasing, that would show, which part of the station would be worked on first, which would then be translated into kind of a staging plan, and a plan for any kind of streets that need to be closed down during construction. So that will all come later. Basically, we just don't have that timeline at this stage.
Thank you, Maura. Shannon Fisher asks in the chat, I was wondering if there was ever talk about making the small section of Park Avenue a two-way street.
Yeah, I can address that. During the planning process, my recollection is that we did consider that as a possibility. The difficulty, of course, is that if traffic is coming up, then there's a difficulty in turning movements. The same problem that we have at Biltmore, with traffic being too heavy to turn right, traffic being too dangerous to turn left, and there are we sort of have to choose where we'd want to add a signal, because there are a number of other signaled intersections nearby. So with the overall sort of site design and layout, the recommendation is to look at Biltmore as the access point.
Okay, we've got another question in the chat from Joanna. Is there any proposal for increased wayfinding signage on West Liberty directing people to the station for this phase, not the larger TOD plan?
So one of the other projects that we're working on right now is a planning process for wayfinding signage for all of our fixed guideway stations. So that's the T stations and the busway stations. Right now we're working with our consultant team to create basically a plan for this kind of system-wide wayfinding signage. We're starting with South Hills Junction in the city, and then kind of looking at some other types of stations and creating kind of guidelines and a plan for what types of signs would go at what types of stations. And so this certainly will be part of that eventually. And it's definitely something that we are working on actively and very excited about. So stay tuned.
Okay, I wanted to just mention Connor Tompkins said that the plan looks great and is looking forward to seeing it. Thank you, Connor. Is there anybody else on the phone who would like to ask any questions or has any comments? Oh, and it looks like Mark Ford also put a comment in the chat related to the wayfinding signage that Mark said, good point, this station is invisible from West Liberty. Okay, so any last comments or questions? Oh, here we go. Will this reduce parking on Raleigh? From Shannon.
Actually, no, it may increase parking on Raleigh. One of the earlier slides, if I can get to it. So part of what was in the plan was to reconfigure that. There's like that really jagged curb edge, the kind of the sawtooth sidewalk that's on Raleigh adjacent to the station. So part of what this is proposing to do is reconfigure that to basically better utilize the street space. And not only would it add a few parking spaces, but it would also widen the sidewalk there, and enhance pedestrian access at the crosswalk there at Raleigh. So it actually would add a few spaces and also potentially a few spaces on street could be added on Park Boulevard as well. If we, removed the current kind of contraflow one-way bus lane that's there but not really utilized, the removal of that would also add spaces on street on Park Boulevard.
Thank you, Maura. Dave says, great job. Ben is right. You nailed every item on the to-do list. Thank you, Dave. And Joanna asks, are the translucent materials for screens and canopy being used for other stations throughout Port Authority?
So yes, they are in now all of the kind of conceptual plans. Like they're also proposed similar screening at Station Square, which we just had the 30% design meeting for last week. So that has similar panels. And then Negley Station, which is going to be, starting construction this year, which was the first station to go through this process, will also have similar screening with kind of that blue color and some opportunities for identity signage to have the station name. So yes, that is something that we're trying to carry through and make consistent in all of these station improvement plans.
Okay, Connor asks, does Port Authority take into account induced demand or increased demand when considering adding parking? I'm concerned about adding car congestion to the area.
Do you mean adding parking in the form of the TOD or the on-street parking that I was just talking about?
Yeah, sorry, this is Connor here. I'm just worried that if we add parking, then that'll increase car traffic to the area when West Liberty and McFarland is already pretty trafficked. So is that part of the calculations?
Yes, definitely. That's definitely something we are very aware of and something that guides our work to try to increase transit ridership and help people be less car dependent. And so, of course, we don't want to contribute to the problem and want to make sure that, we're not adding things that aren't necessary, and also that we're improving, our transit facilities so that people don't have to rely on their cars and can get around on transit.
And just to add to that, it's unlikely in sort of rough terms that there will be more parking on the site in the future than there is now. But the goal with future parking would be for that parking to be used more efficiently. Right now, those are surface lots that are, only full from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on weekdays. And the hope would be with a development that we would have different users, at different times, therefore allowing for overall less parking. Also, certainly the maximum we would build is what the zoning code allows. And, if the developer felt that they didn't need that much, we would be willing to support that discussion.
Thank you, Breen. All right, Shannon Fisher has her hand up. Shannon, would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yes, hi, how you doing? Wanted to just let you guys know, and I was curious, I live on Tolma, and I know the top of Tolma and the top of Marvin next to us doesn't have a stop sign on the top of it. Is that something you guys were looking at too, as far as flow and the control of traffic?
No, we haven't looked at that particular intersection, so that might be something to raise with the borough more specifically.
Okay, yeah, I just was worried that there's with more traffic or more flow through there, that there would definitely be a chance for. I've had several close calls there, and we don't need more.
Yeah, again, I think the goal is for there not to be more traffic than there is now, but to figure out how to sort of balance the need for car access to the site with encouraging as much transit use as possible.
Okay, is there anybody else on the phone that has any questions or any more questions for the project team? Okay, we do have a question here from Stephen. Stephen says, less important than use, do Port Authority standards still allow for localized accents, art murals like South Hills Junction?
Yes, so we actually just recently, our board passed a public art policy that would basically help us manage public art that would be on our property. It helps us design a process to acquire new art. It helps us figure out how we deal with temporary art installations, as well as, the removal of any art should that be an issue. So yes, we now have an official art policy and hoping to have public art be a part of all of these station projects. It's definitely something we want to see for sure.
Okay, and Gary asks, where would guests of residents park?
Well, I think they would continue to park where they currently do. I'm not sure that this would actually be really removing where, residential, oh, you mean residents of the new development, I'm guessing. Okay, sorry. Well, that is something that would be worked out again, as we said, through the kind of development solicitation process that would address all specific parking related numbers, questions, rules, that kind of thing. So we haven't dealt with that level of detail in this plan.
All right, are there any additional questions or comments for the project team? From anyone on the phone, it'd be *6 to unmute yourself. Okay, it looks like we have addressed all of the questions from the participants today. So does the project team, are there any final comments?
None for me, just thanks to everybody for participating and raising some great points, asking really good questions. Just thanks for your involvement, and we'll continue to keep you updated as the designs progress.
Great, so thank you to the project team, David, Breen, Mora, and all the Port Authority staff on the call today and all our participants. And as a reminder, this presentation will be posted at portauthority.org/Dormont Junction, where you can also review the design documents and provide your comments at the website. So I'll be putting that information in the chat, as well as the phone number David mentioned earlier for the Mount Lebanon Transit Tunnel project as well. So thank you again, everyone, for your time this evening, and I hope you have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you all.